Library podcast. I'm your host Mehdi, and this is Aslan and Adriano. Today we're discussing a very interesting topic, as always. Today's topic is going to be the psychology of solitude. So, the way we can start this episode is first of all to distinguish between loneliness and solitude. So, from my understanding, loneliness is a subjective personal feeling. It's something that you can feel while being alone or being with other people. It's a personal feeling that people feel dependent on certain criterias. And solitude is a state, a condition that you put yourself in willingly for the following purposes. Could be self-growth, could be reflection, could be having spiritual experiences. So today we're going to be discussing different angles of looking at solitude, why people seek solitude for self-improvement or the other outcomes that I just mentioned, and some of the people throughout history who seek that outlet for their personal growth. Guys, what do you think about the subject? And we can start with sharing some personal experiences. If you ever seek solitude or your understanding about solitude.
Well, I can start. The first thing that I was thinking about when I was doing research for this episode, from like a personal story, was I've never really, I think, intentionally or consciously put myself in that kind of state, but somewhat of a imitation of that state was the pandemic, I think, for a lot of people. And I think especially for those people that were obviously in the lockdown and they weren't able to spend time with their families, so they were kind of by themselves and they had to figure out like a way to structure their life, their routine, and how to basically adapt to this new situation that they're in, which is kind of like, well, you can't really interact with people much. And obviously, I'm saying this is somewhat of an imitation of a solitude because we're not, in this case, completely isolating ourselves from everyone, because a lot of people still had access to the internet, of course, and platforms, social media, like Clubhouse was a huge thing at the time where everyone was just talking to each other. So those kind of things, obviously, like there was some kind of shift of balance, I think.
Just to add
Where
something,
Yeah,
quickly, we were not also willing to be in solitude. It was a
Yeah,
certain
exactly.
conditioning that put us in that state.
it was forced.
Definitely. I think for me, one of the good things though from that experience was that I kind of felt a glimpse of what the benefits could be because the benefits of solitude, because I put myself consciously in a state where I would go all in that, like, let's just structure our day, like let's set goals, work out, do work. Like it was I loved the beauty of the focus that I had at the time. But
Yeah.
that's because I also am, by personality, I'm not like a super extroverted person, so I was thriving kind of in that state. So for me it was perfectly, like, it was just a reduction of like a reduction in potential distractions, which was great. And I think that's kind of one of the cool things about or beneficial things about being in solitude, is this absolute reduction in distractions that you have throughout the day. In the case of the pandemic, for me, obviously it was not full reduction, but it was reduced to the point where I was already seeing benefits from it. So that was kind of my personal experiment with it, I guess. But I think it's quite, if you go full in on like solitude, like consciously deciding to do it with an aim of growth, with an aim of also, one of the things is, a huge aspect of solitude is kind of the um, the individuation in Jungian psychology, or the growth that we go through, and it all starts with kind of facing our fears, facing our anxieties, which kind of happens when you put yourself in that state, because you're um, coming back to the idea of being cut off from all the distractions and all the opportunities to socialize with people. um, you're kind of now on your own, where you have to just deal with your feelings and your emotions, whatever you may have had previously. Like, let's say, there's something you're postponing, you're not thinking about some certain things, you're postponing them. And being in that state, it really gives you, it really kind of forces you to face those things
Go
head on.
yourself and dance, like
Yeah, definitely. um what about you, Adriano? Have you ever had any kind of similar experiences, or any
I'm
other thoughts?
I've never experienced solitude as itself. I have been in like spiritual retreats, in Buddhist retreats and stuff like that, where there's like days of total silence. But you're also interacting with other people. It's not like fully solitude per se. I would love to do it, experience it, like I don't know, something crazy like a month or 3 months around that range. It would be super cool.
Mm-hmm.
So like I will definitely plan it in the near future. But yeah, I would like to say two things, because before we were talking about the pandemic, we were talking about like how we were like forced into this environment of being secluded. Um, there's this story about this African American boxer in the US. His nickname was the Hurricane, if I'm not mistaken. In the 70s, late 70s, early 80s, if
Mm-hmm.
also around that time, I'm not exactly sure the date, he was wrongly accused of murder. He got confused with another young man, and they sentenced him like to life in prison. And when he actually got exonerated later on, because of some Canadians that helped him out to prove his innocence, he had already been in jail for 20 years. And of those 20 years, he spent in isolation for 15. So he was in isolation for 15 years. Literally fucking crazy. He wrote a book about it, or several books as
Mm-hmm.
well. He used to go like around the country and other countries giving speech of how he was able to put himself into this mental state of overcoming his imprisonment, right? Somebody taking out his freedom of movement, of everything, and how he was with himself in this tiny little fucking cube,
Mm-hmm.
and basically he he outshined, he outperformed his own mind. And it's very interesting for whoever wants to read his book. I'm pretty sure you can find it. But that's also the idea, right? That normally isolation should be looked upon by the individual, but sometimes it's forced, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that story is actually really cool. And I just wanted to add other two things, like the difference from loneliness, as Mehdi said before. Loneliness is a feeling, and he's absolutely right. Like, it's a feeling that can be felt even when you're accompanied by other people, because there's the feeling that they make you feel alone,
Mm-hmm.
that you don't feel connected to other people, to other to a group of people, for example, to a social group, or in a circumstance. Like you're in a room, everybody's talking, you're like by yourself sitting in the
Mm-hmm.
corner. Is like this interaction is making me feel lonely, even though I'm surrounded by people. So it is a feeling. Normally, it's a feeling that is like related with sadness, or maybe with anger. But yeah, it's a feeling. And then solitude is a state of being, because you put yourself into this state where you have to face your demons, basically. Is to understand yourself better, to figure out more about yourself, like where are these little things coming from, like, answer the question who you are.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to Buddhism, like, monks have to go through like several practices of solitude, um, because it's necessary for the human mind to be comfortable with yourself. And solitude allows this to happen because, as you said before, we're always looking for a distraction, right? We're always looking for something to do, something to keep you busy, like not. We're also in a stage in an era that being bored is kind of a luxury now, because your attention is being snatched by the second by every little thing, the TV, your phone. They're like fighting for your attention, even the seconds of it. Your computer, social media, whatever you want to say, even games online or blah, 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 listening to a podcast, going here, going there. So boredom has become kind of a luxury. While before it was a necessary thing, you needed to deal with boredom and being with yourself and trying to understand and just contemplate about like the existence of being. Maybe it will depend on each individual, right? And with Buddhist, when I was going with this is because like they're trying to answer the question of who you are, like who am I, like there was this really good interview that they made to this Buddhist monk. They were like, the interviewer went there and said like, what's the biggest issue that humanity is facing? And he said like, okay, before I can answer you, I need you to ask you some questions. Who are you? And he says like, well, my name is Adriano. And he's like, no, but that's your name. Who are you? Well, I'm a journalist and I'm here to interview. No, that's your profession. Who are you? Well, I'm from America or whatever. It's like, no, that's your country of origin. Who are you? And it goes on and on and on and on until the interviewer like cannot even answer the question anymore and says like, okay, you got me. I don't know who I am.
Yeah.
And the monk goes like, that's the biggest issue of humanity right now, that we don't know who we are. And he's like, boom. And solitude is a good weapon. It must be it has to be a very difficult challenge. I'm not saying it's not. And I have not faced it myself. I have read about it many times, in many different occasions, in many different things and books and seen and blah, 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 blah. But it must be a very intriguing, interesting, and like good challenge to face. And maybe we all as humans should do it.
Definitely. I think it's interesting also from like well, I think a lot of people would think about it through more like logistically, like how to make it happen, because you basically have to just like cut off all contact with people.
Seclude yourself, right?
Yeah, right. So you have to like, just practically speaking, right? You have to, if you're working, you're on a vacation where you're, it's not really a kind of a typical vacation.
Yeah.
You're just
you're not gonna have fun.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe you will, but that's not the whole purpose of it, right?
Yeah. It's very interesting, and I think like I mean there are a lot of benefits to it that I think that people don't really see on the surface when you're thinking about it, because you kind of tend to think of all the negative things.
It's also like, you tell me if I'm wrong, both of you guys, but like social, like we're social animals, we're social creatures, right?
Definitely, yeah.
Like we need to have social interactions to be healthy, and this has already been proven scientifically and stuff. But at the same time, we're also deep creatures that we need to kind of understand certain things and where we're coming from and where they're coming from and blah 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 blah. So the practice of solitude nowadays, I feel it's necessary for the human soul per se, because the majority of people live in these mass congregations of people called cities, in which then the individuality of each person kind of gets lost. So
Not
there's
kind of.
no,
It gets lost.
yeah, exactly. Exactly, it gets lost. So the practice of solitude helps you get that back.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the main aim of this conditioning that you can put yourself in, which is solitude, is having a better relationship with yourself. I'm not going to say having the best relationship with yourself, because I think that's a lifelong journey.
A
And if
privilege.
you focus on just that, you're gonna miss also the time to actually enjoy life, because you're just gonna be thinking about these questions like who am I, or what's the meaning of my life.
Yeah.
Shout out to Salma, a very good friend of mine. She wrote an article on Medium that I found very inspiring, and she was talking about like happiness and meaning and stuff like that. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not something that you pause yourself, you try to deal with, and then you move on. It's small pieces that you try to collect during every experience, and you start identifying what's your meaning or who you are exactly. But solitude is very good because, as you said, we lack attention, we lack focus. It's being literally stolen by all the social media, everything that's distracting us. And it's not only a luxury, it's not actually boredom. The fact that we don't get to feel boredom is insane,
Yeah.
because even while driving you can be listening to music, watching something. And sometimes I imagine, even during, like, we distract ourselves from literally everything. If you're in the gym, I find it very difficult not to listen to music while working out, because I think you're doing some already painful exercises, and then if you're not distracted or motivated by the music, you're gonna be thinking at the same time maybe about the meaning of life or something like that. You need another distraction.
Mm-hmm.
You're already distracted by doing physical challenges, but you want also something mental that can distract you from being in that state. I think the best thing that you can do if you're not in solitude, which is also a form of solitude, but we can talk about it as a sub form that could be temporary, which is meditation. I think it's the only thing, and journaling as well, because you put your ideas and the way you feel into words, and you can reflect on them or you can think about them deeply. But meditation, just the fact of sitting and doing nothing, and then that's the challenge, because when you do nothing, all these bad feelings or all these thoughts, your demon starts fighting you, and then
Mm-hmm.
you're having unpleasant um, memories or whatever in your mind, and it makes it difficult to keep going just to finish like 10 minutes or 15 minutes
Mm-hmm.
of meditation.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why the fact that you do it on a daily basis, it gives you more peace of mind and more clarity, because you get used to that state of sitting with yourself, acknowledging all the feelings that you have,
Mm-hmm.
and then I know you're there, I know you exist. You don't try to fight them and you don't try to change them. You just accept them, and you have more peace of mind.
Yeah.
So yeah, when you're in solitude, you sit with yourself. There are a lot of things. There is self-reliance. You rely on your idea. You're not influenced by your surroundings or what you see. There is the fact that also one of the things that we distract ourselves from is the list of our fears. We don't really face our fears. When you're sitting with yourself, if there is anything that you fear or anything that you're anxious about or anything that's always in the back of your mind that you just try to throw to the void or let your shadow gets it until it comes back at you.
Yeah.
When you sit with yourself, you come to acknowledge and accept that they exist. Now you need to face it. You're sitting with yourself. You're not going to be distracted. And that's what makes solitude that hard, is the fact that you need to deal with this alone, and you're the only one who can help you overcome this state of dealing with these either your shadow or these feelings. Throughout history, I think a lot of people seeked solitude for different reasons. Um, I think there's Bill Gates, who spends at least 2 weeks in solitude in the middle of nowhere just to come up with new ideas for Microsoft. No people around, just him. Um, Carl Jung talked about individuation and the fact that you need to seek solitude for being that individual, for sitting with yourself and seek individuation instead of conformity that kills your creativity and kills the authentic person you are. There was Miyamoto Musashi, The Path of the Loner, the Dokodo. I hope I'm pronouncing it right because it's in Japanese. But he put 21 principles of being a loner. And obviously, for him, solitude was a good way not only to practice, because he was an insane Ronin. He had more than 60 fights, no losses, and he was also a thinker. So when he sit by himself, he sits and reflects about life. He finds peace. He practices. And back then it was very difficult because again, we have all the luxury of being under a ceiling and not being anxious that a lion would would come and jump at us. But back then you're surrounded by animals, by threats, and you still it's more challenging to seek solitude in that case. But he found solitude to be that outlet in which he can actually reflect, think, practice. And even when you look at anime, there is always that character who seeks solitude, who just trains by himself, like Netero in Hunter x Hunter, which is a very inspiring character. Just praying, practicing, and that's what he does every day until he became a master and figured out something that no one figured out. At the very end, we're all social animals. I feel that I'm giving a speech or a lecture because I have a lot of
No,
ideas in
no.
my mind. But there is Zarathustra, for example, who spent many decades reflecting by himself. But at the very end, he felt the need of going back and teach, even though it was also challenging for him to teach what he realized when he was dealing with people. And I think there was a illustration by Nietzsche, like a black sheep among sheep, or
Mm.
something like that.
Yeah.
So you feel that you're misunderstood, and that's also one of the things that you can feel if you seek solitude and you reflect by yourself. Once you go back to your surroundings, you're gonna feel a difference if you outgrow them, because then you're a bit hard to be understood. And that's what
It's,
actually Nietzsche faced in his life. He felt that he
it,
was misunderstood and he seeks solitude.
but
Tell me, Adriana.
it's because like you leave the herd, like you you put yourself out of the equation, so you're not part of the herd anymore. So when you
Hmm.
come back to the herd, you are that black sheep because you
Yeah,
are a different individual and have grown by itself instead of like grown in group.
yeah, because you get away of that conforming environment. It's all about,
Yeah,
again, individuation and conformity. So once you become that individual, obviously you're going to be that different person from the people around you.
yeah, and
um,
nobody's there to point the direction or to tell you how to do it or what to do. You have to figure it out by yourself.
I think by then, yeah, you're self-aware that you need to find answers to all the questions that you had in your mind by yourself. But I think the influence of people is going to be a constant thing, and
Yeah,
that's why some people need to have a kind of program of solitude. Like they need
Mm-hmm.
to, when they meet people, they know, like Bill Gates, 2 weeks a year to just isolate yourself and then think
Mm-hmm.
deeply about either your business or something like that.
Yeah.
There's a saying by Pablo Picasso. I'm not sure if I'm phrasing it right, but there is no great work done if you're not isolated. And he talks about creative work. Obviously, if you've been in the museum of Pablo Picasso, it's insane by all the um,
Mm-hmm.
the
yeah.
drawings and the paintings he has.
Las Meninas.
A lot of a lot of great work, right? And he used to seek solitude to do creative work. There is also Mozart. There are thinkers, Nietzsche, Franz Kafka. I think the ideal scenario is finding joy in being around people, but also have the mental flexibility to stay alone for some time, to reflect, to think, and then not also come back after solitude with some kind of judgment towards these people,
Yeah,
or
Definitely.
feeling the mission of this enlightenment. Because if you realize something and you're that type of people who's a fixer, or you try to help people, then you're gonna find it as a mission for you to enlighten people. But I think it's very difficult for people to even understand or realize some stuff if they don't deal with their inner selves first. I'm gonna give you the
There's this.
stage because I spoke a lot.
No, no, it's okay. But just to compliment, is the saying that you cannot help someone who is not looking for help, right? And then that's also a thing. You're there if you want to be that type of character. You're there to showcase what you have learned. It will be up to people if they want to listen to it. You cannot
Definitely.
force anyone. You know what I mean?
Mm,
Um, when it comes to solitude, the whole idea is to give the information out there to say like it will be good for your soul, and maybe you'll wait for people to do it,
Yeah.
like ourselves,
mhm.
for example.
Yeah, I think there are also, for me, what stands out really is kind of if you look at it more from a practical angle, and I think that's what you've been talking about as well, Mehdi, about Bill Gates, for example.
Yeah.
It doesn't, I don't think, I mean, you can make it as profound as you want it to for yourself, obviously. And I think that there are, in the long run, it's the same thing as with meditation. You can look at it more as like a daily practice to just like shut down all the thoughts and all the noise of the world around you, and just like sit with yourself in peace and just notice.
But that's the funny thing about meditation.
Yeah.
You don't shut down.
Yeah, you don't, but you're kind of.
You just
Yeah.
contemplate what's coming through your head.
Yeah, yeah.
So the whole idea is not to get hooked into a thought.
Yeah, exactly.
Being like, there's a really good practice I do is that when I meditate, I always repeat to myself, what's my next thought gonna be? What's my next thought gonna be?
So you're
And
meditating on the thoughts.
when it arrives, I just contemplate it, let it go. I don't get hooked to it, and then make a chain of.
Yeah.
But that's also what is good about solitude in the same way, right? Because it's kind of a physical practice to it. Because normally when you have to deal with shit, when you have to deal with trauma, when you have to deal with your fears, as we were saying before, you evade them. And the easiest way to evade them is going out with friends. Like, going clubbing. Or let's go and play some like board games. Or I wonder what Jesus is doing, or like. So when you're like by yourself and you're like, fuck, I have these really uncomfortable that I have on my head. Well, too bad.
Yeah.
There's nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. You have to deal with it right now.
Yeah.
So what's it gonna be?
Yeah. There's definitely part of it that's, as I was saying with meditation, you can think if you're very interested in it. I think that you can think past the practical side of it, where, like, for example, in meditation you can think like, okay, who are you? Your search for yourself, kind of, while you're meditating. The like, is there a meditator, or is there nothingness? Like, who, like, find yourself. Who is thinking here? Like, is it your thoughts, or they're just all there? Is it just consciousness? That's kind of, to me, that's kind of the next level of meditation, where you're not just like sitting with the goal of just noticing and relaxing, but you're kind of, it's an active practice of like, I have an active goal to get to the point where I'm actually doing this mindfulness,
and also
beyond just.
Dude, yeah, and it's also letting go of control.
Yeah.
That's a big thing. We think we are in control, but we're not. And control freaks, which I think I am one of them in many aspects, and I think I work with it, and meditation helps you, is that you realize that you're not in control. The only things that you're in control are the things that you can deal with it, and stoicism is a really good practice when it comes to it, because then the only thing that you can control is how you react to thirst, to certain things, right? Or
Exactly.
in this case will be where you put yourself in. So if you seclude yourself, that's something you can control. You're deciding to go somewhere where nobody is around you, and you have to deal with shit on your own way.
There's part of it, like, for example, coming back to the solitude discussion, just making the comparison with meditation. I think that, like, you can kind of make it about, in the long run, about dealing with these negative thoughts, or dealing with certain unresolved things. But at the same time, I think that if that's something that scares you, like if, because I think that it's a very kind of can be a scary thing. Like,
Yeah.
why would I do this to myself? I think from a more practical aspect, like for example, what Bill Gates does, it's more about just like if you're a really busy person, which I think a lot of people today these days are, like you're just all over the place, meeting friends, going to work. It's just time for you to just pause, kind of, and just like reflect. Essentially, I think that that's a big part of it. Where
Time for yourself. I
yeah,
like that.
yeah, time for yourself. Like, I think that makes it more approachable at the
Yeah.
same time, where you're like, okay, this is just the time for me. Obviously, you have to reduce these distractions as well, right? Like, you have to get off social media, like all these things. But if you think about it more like, okay, this is time. I'm like, this is time for myself here, my safe space, so to
Yeah.
speak. Like this is time for myself, and you kind of just let your thoughts do their thing essentially. That's kind of the what happens, I think, inevitably, because when you're by yourself and you don't have these distractions, it's just gonna, you don't have to force it, or you don't have to, like, okay, let me now face my demons,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it's just, the thoughts are gonna come, and you just contemplate, and you think, and you reflect. And I think that meditation is kind of a good example of like a very mini version of this
Of
kind of
solitude.
solitude,
Yeah.
because it's like just solitude for 10 minutes. If you're meditating for 10 minutes, you're like,
Even going on a hike by yourself could be a
yeah.
practice of
Hmm.
solitude.
Hmm.
Like
I think,
there could be many things. Yeah.
yeah,
Sorry. Go ahead.
I think it's okay. I think there are many things. When you seek solitude, for example, you might have in mind that I just want to take some time to reflect, or I just want to be creative. But the good thing about solitude is once you're alone, you sit by yourself, you might discover many things that you weren't even considering. For
Yeah.
example, I imagine when I had some time to sit alone, and I push my phone away, I start thinking about the things that I like and could be a good distraction for me, like reading, for example. You connect more with your primal inclination, which could be, I don't know, you're in the middle of nowhere sitting by yourself, but there is nature and you like photography or you like painting.
Mm.
You might start painting and embrace your creative side. There are many things. It's not only the psychological aspect of it, there is also the creative side. There is also the psychological and philosophical side. If you're having, again, Franz Kafka, if you have any existential questions or thinking about the world in general, questions that no one can answer, but if you sit with yourself, you might not be able to answer all these questions, but at least you're not throwing them to the void. They come up because they're always suppressed. Again, it could be a fear of being insane thinking about something that you cannot control, but if you sit with yourself, you reflect on things, then that's gonna have the ideal outcome again, which is having a better relationship with yourself. And you sit unmasked, you're true to yourself. That's also a good side
Mm-hmm.
of it. We're always having this persona in front of people, we're always masked.
Yeah.
When you're by yourself, you face your true self. Whoever is you, you're dealing with that person.
Mm-hmm.
You deal with your own bullshit, right? Which
Well,
is
your bullshit and the good shit as well.
yeah, 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 yeah. Every type of shit. You know, when you say about mask, it reminded me of like a Japanese saying that every person has three masks. The one they show to the outside world, the one they show to their family and friends, and the one they show to no one,
Mm-hmm.
not even
Mm,
to themselves. Something along that line.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So, yeah, the whole idea will be to find that fucking mask and figure out where this is coming from.
Yeah, 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 definitely. It's, I guess that's kind of, if you put it in Jungian terms, like the encounter with your shadow
Hmm.
side, basically, which is, if you're constantly, well, we all have a social persona, and I think the more time we spend with other people and the more time we spend being social, you start developing this imbalance of
Yeah.
your social persona being so active all the time that your inner self gets almost no attention.
Yeah.
Like, and then more stuff builds up there, and then it can spill out like into your social self, and then you start having these strange behaviors that um yeah, like will hurt other people around you as well. That's kind of the shadow possession that can happen. But I think like this definitely, like, if you're at a, like, that's the thing, if you're like, for example, I kind of think about this thing a lot these days, where I think, when you have a lot of work to do, for example, you think like, oh, like, I'm just gonna do all of this, and then like go to bed and then get up and do it over again.
Yeah.
And like, it's like, can you do it? Like, logically, yes, maybe.
Yeah.
But then what kind of mental toll will it take on you, like, that's the thing, where it's like, in this case, you're not distracted by social media, for example, but you're distracted by just lack of time with like, you're just, you don't have any time with yourself. You're doing something productive, sure, maybe, like, it's
Or according to you.
according to you, yeah, like your career self is kind of, improving. But let's say, at the same time, you're not having any time with yourself, which eventually, um like, that's when the shadow possession can happen, where you can no longer really sustain the this kind of lifestyle. That's why it's so difficult. So I think that,
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
um that's just an example of, like, because, to me, I think that, okay, like, I'm fine, like, I'm at a level where I'm fine, but like, I can so easily, if I just push myself to an insane amount, like, that could definitely happen, like, where you have absolutely no time to just sit and think by yourself, like, because otherwise, you have to make sacrifices, then just cut off people from your life. And um, yeah, it's I think it's very important to, a good way, in my opinion, to start, like, integrating more this kind of, if you're not really someone who likes spending time with yourself, you can start integrating this kinds of things more. For example, even if it's not meditation, it could be something that, like, hiking by
Yeah.
yourself, or
Running.
uh,
Yeah.
running. Yeah, just do something where you have, like, an, it could be however long you want, but
Even reading a book,
yeah,
like just
Hmm.
find somewhere that nobody will disturb you for like 3 hours.
yeah. It's such a relief, honestly. And I think that, like, um, people who don't do it, I think they don't see what kind of a luxury it is
Yeah.
to be able to have that kind of thing. And some people are so, I know these people, and they're like pathologically afraid of doing anything by themselves,
Yeah.
even going
Hmm.
to, like, get lunch.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
They
yeah.
feel that
There's
everybody will
this
be
this fear
judging
of
them.
sitting alone, or they might look crazy if they're just sitting by
yeah,
themselves with no one. And even if
yeah,
they do, you might see the person, or you're definitely gonna see the person put in AirPods with their phone, and they're watching a video or anything to be distracted, not fully focused on that moment, enjoying the coffee or enjoying that sandwich or whatever. We're
mm-hmm.
always seeking distractions. One of the things that I was thinking about, because I think due to work and due to the different responsibilities and engagements we have, whenever we get to have a vacation, especially I think that the three of us live abroad, we don't live with our families. So whenever you get a vacation, you don't really take the time to just pause everything and just chill by yourself and do nothing. We're
Mm-hmm.
always gonna be engaged to go see our parents, see our friends, or travel
Yeah.
somewhere because life is short. But you
Yeah,
know, during during this whole process of working every day and being engaged in different things, we don't really take the time to just pause everything and have at least like 2 or
yeah,
3 days of just pure not doing anything, or just enjoying
Yeah.
ourselves by sitting alone or going somewhere just looking at nature and observing the
Definitely.
whole time,
Yeah.
which I think
I
it's a
think,
very good thing.
yeah.
Shoot.
I think also that for like younger people, like people in their like early 30s or late 20s or 20s, um, it's kind of this thing where, you know, you're always actively doing something, which is like
Hustling.
hustling. And like even like on a vacation, it just becomes like this thing where like I want to see the most places, like it becomes work
I
kind of.
Yeah.
always I always need the vacation after my vacation because I
Yeah.
have I have always the vacation very planned. If I'm going somewhere, I need to go see these museums. I need to visit this place. I heard there is nice coffee here. So
Yeah.
everything is literally planned. You don't leave anything to just coincidence or
Chance.
something that could happen. Exactly. And you're programming yourself to be busy again, to be distracted. You don't really take the advantage of finally let me just I think the only time I've actually done this, not fully again, because I had some
Mhm.
places that I wanted to see, is my solo trip to Venice. Because
Uh-huh.
I didn't have any expectation about the city. I know how beautiful Venice is, but you know, there is you cannot take a car or take a bus, go somewhere. There are water buses, but you're definitely just walking around,
Mhm.
like just walking the whole time. So I had a series of stuff that I wanted to see, like galleries and museums, but at the same time that was fulfilled in one day. The other 2 days I was just walking around, just seeing
Mhm.
beautiful places, just coming across another island that I didn't know that exists there, and then I would just walk,
Mhm.
see how beautiful everything is, take pictures, and then move. And I think that was one of my best experiences because I was just by myself doing what I like, taking pictures, looking at the city, and yeah, I would like to have the same experience again. But again, it was not pure solitude because I had my
Yeah.
phone. I receive a
Yeah.
reaction for my beautiful stories because I'm taking pictures the whole time and
Mm.
sharing them on social media. It was not purely to myself just thinking, and that's the thing. We're always distracted. So I think
Yeah.
I'm definitely from this episode. I'm definitely thinking about taking like 3 days with no phone, with nothing, just
Yeah.
booking somewhere with a nice
Yeah.
view and just spending the time there with no phone, maybe just books and
Yeah.
sitting with
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah. 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 And I have to say though, solo traveling is always a good way to practice a little bit.
Yeah. Bless
Sorry.
you.
Bless you.
Thank you. But like, when you put yourself in a position when you have to deal shit with yourself, that's good practice, and then you can just intensify that. But yeah, I agree with you. I would love to go like a weekend, a long weekend, like in the mountains, just by yourself in a small cabin, and just like
Yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
just there.
Yeah. It's a matter of making it kind of a doing that and then trying to make it a routine. At least like
Yeah,
once a year, you would do that kind of a
yeah.
thing. Actually, like I remember that my dad does that. I just realized that he, like once a year, I think for 2 weeks, he goes to like it's called a sanatorium type of a thing. I think that's what it's like a health resort type of thing, and he just stays there for 2 weeks and
That's
just
cool.
yeah, doesn't do work, nothing, just like chill, eat, you know, walk around, you know. But I think
That's
like I'm
dope.
realizing that he talks more about it from a health perspective, but I'm realizing that actually like
It's
there's
mental health perspective as well.
Yeah,
yeah, it's because he talks because it's a sanatorium and they do
Mm.
like, you know, you go to procedures that like, you know, baths, like mud baths or
yeah.
whatever you do. But like there's also a mental part of it which I didn't really think about, which is like, you know, you're stop like thinking about interacting with like all the work related thoughts, and like he goes there by himself, so it's just like yeah, you're by yourself. It's and I think it's so cool. Like I think everyone should try that. Like doesn't have to be 2 weeks, but you know,
Hmm.
I think short bursts of those kind of experiences are amazing.
Are good for the soul.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, I think it's really needed, especially in our times with
Yeah.
all the distraction that we have.
Yeah, and
I think.
especially if you're a creative person as well,
Mm,
because um, I think that just quickly wanted to mention about the creativity part, because I think that as a creative person, it's extremely important to, because it's actually so easy to get really busy as a creative person at the same time, like because the creativity, like whatever creative thing you're doing, it's so much effort and so much work, and in some creative fields you interact with a lot of people, and it just becomes like you're just busy all the time, and you're required to make this output, creative output, but at the same time you don't really have that moment to just like be creative.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just like performing all the time, like come on, like do this, and then you have no time to actually like be creative or hone your craft, or like just explore, like go inward and stop and think and like get inspired. And I'm definitely feeling that right now in terms of the creative work that I'm doing. It's like it's hard if you don't have, and if you don't, it requires discipline in a way, and discipline, sacrifice to make that time for yourself to just be creative. And you know, and then when you're performing, you're putting out things, then okay, that's just more about work and discipline. But then at the same time, you really need those, that little time where you can just sit and just like pause and just, you know, you're not like, I have 2 hours to come up with something, you know. It's like, no,
Yeah.
like you need time to just like chill. Because I think during the pandemic, for me, what was amazing for my writing, for example, when I was writing, I wrote the most during the pandemic, because I just had the time to just like,
And this space, right?
yeah, let's just read a book.
actually,
And
same. Writing was never a thing for me. I think until the pandemic. I think I wrote most of the stuff in the pandemic.
so it's like you just have time to just like, okay, let me write this, but like really
Like
um
properly.
like I'm feeling it, you know, what I'm writing, not just like, you know, and like, okay, this is the structure and I need to put
Yeah.
this here and let's be quick, I don't have much more time.
Yeah.
And you're not discussing these ideas with someone. So also the fact that you have
Yeah,
everything in mind and you just try to voice
yeah.
it out through any form, like painting,
Hmm.
writing, whatever it could be. It definitely helps creativity and it helps clear in your mental space as well.
Definitely, definitely. I hope I didn't. I hope you still remember what you were gonna say, Mehdi. I might have broken your chain of
No,
thought. I
no,
don't know.
no, no, no.
Okay.
Luckily, I remember what I wanted to say.
Okay.
But actually, I just wanted to say that solitude is very good, but it's a temporary thing. Don't think about it as an outlet to,
Long term.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, like, to actually be a loner and always seek solitude and not find joy sitting with people. And also don't obsess about finding yourself, because again, it's a journey. You're not gonna find yourself from your first meditation or your first solitude experience. It's something that you always gonna strive for, and it's not something to be obsessed about, because then it's like you're fighting your inner self because you're not finding answers yet. But answers also get accumulated through different experiences, and maybe you don't have the tools and the experiences that will help you find these answers. So
Hmm.
don't obsess about that. Find joy in sitting with people. Being around people is an amazing thing, and suck on every good moment you have with people, because it's not guaranteed that you're gonna see these people again. um, yeah, and that's it. Control what you can, and leave the things that you cannot control, like finding these answers, um, to your future self. You're definitely gonna manage if you find the right balance of improving yourself and at the same time enjoying the process.
That
Totally
was
agree.
that
Yeah.
was that
Yeah,
was
Totally
good
agree
stuff.
with
beautiful.
Good,
everything.
good, good closure.
That was
Yeah, love
that
it.
was that was amazing.
Right.
I don't have anything else to add. Trying to do.
Yeah, I'm Gucci.
Nice.
So, mic drop
Well,
for me.
Boom.
man, you had a few mic drops this episode.
Yeah, nice, nice. I'm glad. All right. I hope everyone enjoyed this episode. We did enjoy the conversation. I would speak for the whole the Human Library team.
Yeah.
If you're interested in hearing us talking about any topics, please leave that in the comment section of YouTube. If you're listening in the streaming platforms, enjoy, leave us a rating that will help us continue with these interesting topics, and see you in the next one.
See you
Thank you,
guys.
everyone.
Good stuff.
I
What do you think,
need
guys?
to be.
It went pretty well.
Yeah.
As always.
was,
I think
it
it's
was
better
nice.
than the one we lost. It's good that we had to do it again.
Yeah.